Think of a restaurant downtown. It's new, and it is unique, and it's so unique that it makes the front of C1, the business section of the paper. Mike Perry goes out to interview the owner, and TV9 shows up, and even David Carroll stops by to do a feature on this. It's a kind of a school patrol feature because there's a lesson to be learned about this restaurant. And the restaurant is one that has a neutrality theme. It's neither blue nor red. It is a neutral color. In fact, the paint scheme is a kind of a beige, and all the furniture is beige, and there's very little color inside. It's very bland. But that is part of the appeal. It doesn't have a lot of sharp edges, and the decor it's 1990s style decor. So it's in the past somewhat. Looks a little bit old, but not really too old. So it's neutral there as well. And Andy Berke, our mayor, is going to go for lunch. He sometimes does that. He stops by, patronizes a new restaurant, especially one that has drawn the attention of the media and the press. Right, I'm the press, and the media, I think, is everybody else, and draws the attention of the press. And Andy Berke is going there for lunch. Now, Andy, the mayor of Chattanooga, who is not going to be running for the Senate after all, leaving that Democratic part to former Knoxville mayor, former governor, Mr. Bredesen, for the U.S. Senate. Andy likes what he sees in a way. Now he's going to make the best of it. He's a very diplomatic man, and from his heritage is that of compromise and accommodation, and so he will find the best in this restaurant. Now the restaurant is one that doesn't have a menu. It's a hamburger restaurant, very high end hamburgers, but there is no menu, and there is only a single price. Okay, you come in, and you don't get a choice. You have to have a single menu. And as he finds out on his high-end plastic tray, that it is a very fine hamburger decked out with lettuce, tomato, and and pickles, mayonnaise, and mustard. There's an order of fries, and then a double cola. Now that's the double cola is overcome its local distribution problems. On the dining side, though, it has not overcome them on the retail side. The locally mined, if you will, cola, and that's on the tray. There's one price, and there's no menu, and the decor is very, very neutral. Now, that is the kind of restaurant that Andy Berke supports, and he supports it philosophically because, and we know he does, because he supports the net neutrality scheme that is on its way out. Andy Berke filed his signature, wrote a signature, probably digitally, on a document that was published a few days ago by Mayors for Meaningful Net Neutrality Protections, a little ad hoc group that is condemning Ajit Pai's shift away from the 1934 law under which President Obama put the FCC and put its claims upon the internet through that public utility statute in the U.S. Code. And so we have net neutrality presenting itself as protecting the poor, protecting choice, and giving us a real hope, right? A hope in the marketplace with a single price and a single menu. Now, the arguments for the support of the maintenance of the new regime under President Obama is an anti-market, anti-free market, anti-choice, anti-democratic perspective. Because whenever you have a single government entity controlling a market and dictating downward who's to do what and who the winners and losers are, you have net neutrality. You have a neutral restaurant. After all, that's the restaurant in Chattanooga, the new one that downtown that will might give Puckett's a run for its money. It is a neutral restaurant, a dining neutral place. Now, the mayors, of which Mayor Berke is the 11th signatory, the mayors are saying that going back on Thursday to what we had before is a threat to education, innovation, and economic growth. They are deeply disturbed by Ajit Pai's commission's efforts to preempt our ability to protect consumers and businesses in our communities. They're making a local economy argument here on the David Tulis Show. And I am David Tulis. I do thank you for tuning into my my program, because we are here to defend the marketplace and to see how it really works. I think in their attack on the free market, we can understand the free market, and I hope maybe we can really appreciate it more. Critical to our communities, they say, reliance on the internet is the confidence that our use of the internet is not subject to the whims, discretion, and economic incentives of gatekeepers, service providers to control and manipulate the experience, they say, of internet users. We're certain that the Commission's proposals will fail to protect the internet and should be abandoned. Despite the Commission's stated support for the principles of net neutrality, the Commission's proposal enables abusive gatekeepers' behavior by dominant broadband providers, allowing broadband providers to engage in paid prioritization schemes. Okay, paid prioritization schemes. Remember, that's the menu, okay? And they're in the restaurant. We're saved from having a paid prioritization scheme, which is the menu, where you have the high-end item for $19 and the low-end item for $9, which rob value from local communities, they say, and stifle innovation, and threatens businesses and consumers by permitting blocking, throttling, and other interference with access to the internet. So that's why we don't have a menu in our restaurant, because we don't want there to be throttling, blocking, and other interference with access to the menu, right? Everybody's got to have the menu, and we want to make it at a price that everyone can afford. Well, of course, it actually is a mid-level menu, and so the poor people outside, the homeless people who walk by, they're not going to be able to go in at all, because there's not a dollar menu, a dollar item menu at the hamburger neutrality restaurant, right? It doesn't exist there. And so we have a mid-level, slightly upper mid-level pricing scheme. The mayor's going to say, Andy Berke among them, and because broadband affordability in low-income communities is already a significant challenge faced by communities nationwide, the Commission's proposal is certain to have a disproportionate effect on the most vulnerable. Of course, that's like saying, when you look at the restaurant, the competitor restaurant, go to Puckett's. Well, Puckett's has a high-end menu and a mid-level menu and a low-end menu. You can buy just a little bit, or you can buy a feast for a family, right? And have so much on your plate at Puckett's that you have to take some home and enjoy your Puckett's fare for lunch the next day, right? Take some of it with you in your lunch bucket. So you have a disproportionate effect on the most vulnerable. Well, you're having net neutrality doesn't really solve that. Hamburger neutrality doesn't solve that either, because the poor still can't, when they look up at the menu, which has one item on it, one price. It is a pretended menu, of course. It's very well decorated. There's a lot of flowers and nice fonts and some colored lights behind the menu. It flashes every now and then. And there's a disproportionate effect on the poor, right? You have this problem. The letter goes on to say, lastly, the Commission's proposal inadequately addresses a scenario in which an area is served by a single provider that blocks, throttles, or otherwise renders top-tier, here's the key language, renders top-tier broadband services too expensive for low-income families. Well, okay, that's why we have a net neutrality, a burger neutrality restaurant, because we want to have a top-tier menu and we don't want it to be too expensive for low-income families. Well, obviously, if you have a restaurant like Puckett's, you have a top-tier service, right? And it is too expensive for poor people. Well, they're not going to buy that. If they go in at all to Puckett's, they'll be ordering from the less expensive menu, or just ordering less. Right? They'll order less food and pay less money. But here you see this sort of egalitarian dream of Democrats and others, the anti-market people, right? The people who believe in so-called neutrality, and they would say that Puckett's and other good restaurants are making top-tier food too expensive for low-income families. Well, that's what the marketplace does. That's how it works. That is the marketplace. Some things are top-tier, and low-income people can't afford them. They shouldn't even be thinking about those things. They shouldn't even be thinking about those things. And we have a call here. The number, by the way, is 800-8949, 800-8949. And call, you're live on the air. David Tulis, what's on your mind?
Can I give you my restaurant analogy on this?
Go ahead.
Okay, because net neutrality is paying for what you use for. That's all. And Andy Berke's obviously a Democrat. Most of them are socialists, and that means government control over production and distribution. And that's why the Soviet Union failed. Very simply, Democrats, liberals, and so-called progressives believe government should control production and distribution, primarily centrally. So they want to control everything. They don't want the free market. That means the bidding process to take place. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going to a buffet, and Fat Jim wants to eat more of the pudding. So Fat Jim keeps eating the pudding, and the restaurant has to keep putting the pudding out. And Skinny Jill is now wanting to eat the pudding too. But Fat Jim is consuming all the pudding. But Fat Jim doesn't pay anymore for the buffet. And then Fat Jim goes on to the ribs, and he goes on. Fat Jim's consuming a lot, but Fat Jim pays the exact same price as Thin Jill, even though she consumes less. See, from each's ability to each's need. That's what socialism is, and it always fails. This is about companies like Netflix consuming a lot of bandwidth, and this is kind of technical stuff, but bandwidth is expensive. You have to have equipment, and so on and so forth, and paying the exact same price as David Tulis or Mike Steele, consuming very little bandwidth, and then we falsely reduce the price. So even though that restaurateur should be making maybe 4% profit, the government says, oh, no, you can only make 2% profit. And once again, that's why the Soviet Union failed. These people, I'm going to repeat this, I've done this my whole life. Democrats are not very intelligent people. I'm sorry to say that, but they're not, because most of them have never owned a business. They've never met a payroll. They've never engaged in the free enterprise system other than running to businesses when there's sales. Because I can get something free or cheap. So this is a psychology. Net neutrality is illegal, it is unconstitutional, and it is about time we have someone that I would consider close to a brain surgeon in business, which is Donald Trump, running a $3 trillion economy. So don't believe anything you see or hear in the media that promotes this socialism. David, they are grasping for straws. The system around them is crumbling. Guess what, David? They're going to have to get a job and pay for stuff, and that scares them.
Well, listen, thanks, Mike. I appreciate your comment, and I think my other listener out there agrees with what you're saying. In the marketplace, and think about the restaurant business again here in Chattanooga, and Mayor Berke happily going and making a big show of enjoying the menu at the Burger Neutrality restaurant. In a real marketplace where there's not an outside coercive force pushing down on what people do below, you have, as Ludwig von Mises explains it in his books, and maybe Gary North, the Christian economist, who's a very wonderful and inspiring writer, they point out that the marketplace is made up of countless individuals who make these decisions, right? And the decisions they're making is always on one main point: price in the consideration of quality. Price and quality. Quality could be time, it could be durability of a good, reliability of a good. All those factors go in, and price is kind of the main element. If you don't have a price and you don't have a varied pricing system or structure, then you make it really the thing you're offering unavailable to the very poor, and then you also prevent if you don't have a real marketplace, you prevent the really good things from being made to those people who need that, who pay a lot more for the much better quality item, but who are now stuck with poor quality that, of course, is cheaper. In the marketplace, you have countless decisions being made, right, by non-experts, but by people who are expert at that point. At whatever market you're talking about, the people in that market are making those decisions. And central planners can't possibly make decisions, even if there is a committee, even if that committee is supported by a team of university-trained experts. Not even they can really plan out a market. The market, real market, under the invisible hand thinking of Adam Smith, or under biblical jurisprudence, right? Biblical economics. The market is, of course, the sovereignty of God is behind that. That sovereignty, by the way, that Roy Moore proposes as the standard of all human conduct, the sovereign God in heaven. In a marketplace, the expertise is dispersed, right? It's decentralized. It is all over. The expertise resides locally. It is local economy, local people deciding what they want, what they can afford. And often the only thing that they really know about is the price. Can they afford that or can they not afford that? They don't know anything about how it works, but the consumer, that would be people like you and me, we don't know how it works. We just want to know, can we afford that for what we receive or can we not? Can we get something like that, maybe just a little bit less, but for a cheaper price? And that's what the end of net neutrality promises. Much more variations in price. Whereas now I pay $60 to EPB for an internet connection, and I don't know that we need that, right? We don't. I think even the lower tier program that it offers might be too much for me. The marketplace has, as I say, it has countless people who are experts, the thousands, even millions of people who are the experts. Those could be the consumers. It is knowledge that you can't collate, right? You can't gather it in one place. You can't feed all the knowledge of the marketplace into a committee of 50 or a committee of 10 and say, okay, these people are going to evaluate the whole marketplace and then determine how things will work. We're going to allocate resources. We're going to tell people what to do, and we're going to set prices. No one committee, even if it has the best people on it, can do that. But rather, the marketplace is local economy. It is decentralized. It is dispersed. It's not organizable, right? It's not collatable. You can't collate it. You can't organize. You can't stack it. It is, and it's especially true in an area in which there's a lot of development, right? In which there's a lot of advancement and improvement being done. And think of the internet and things digital. There, you have a great deal of innovation, and people are always there are always groups of people far ahead of everybody else. If you're like that, you have to have the liberty of the internet. You have to have the non-observable, complex, non-clinical operation of the market individually, where all the people are each valued equally, and no one person is given by law, effectively by law, a greater vote on how things should work, right? And that's what you have with the FCC. You have already an organization, a central government organization that claims far more authority than it has legally, constitutionally. It also practically it is incompetent to do anything. Government organizations are, when it comes to evaluating a market, TN Investco, for example, is another one, the Tennessee business developer out of Nashville. It is incompetent. Charlie Brock's group. It is incompetent. It cannot make decisions. It can't, and in fact, it's losing money, as the Tennessean has reported. It's losing money, and the taxpayers are on the hook for it. There's a good essay, by the way, by Ryan McMacken at Mises Institute. That's Mises.org, and it's called Net Neutrality and the Problem with Experts. He says the world is a very complex place, and it's impossible for a panel of political appointees to understand all the details and varied environments that create market prices and the way in which resources are allocated. He says, he's quoting Hayek, if we can agree that the economic problem of society is mainly one of rapid adaptation to changes in particular circumstances of time and place, it would seem to follow that the ultimate decisions must be left to the people, right? The people would be, you might say, the democratic element in the marketplace, who are familiar with these circumstances and who know directly of the relevant changes and of the resources immediately available to meet them. Okay, that's what Andy Berke does not agree with. He does not really agree with the people making decisions, with the market making decisions, even though he's a Democrat, right? Democrats they're not really democratic, okay? Hayek goes on to say, we cannot expect that this problem will be solved by first communicating all this knowledge to a central board, which, after integrating all knowledge, issues its orders, right? That's what the FCC did under Obama. We must solve it by some form of decentralization, but this answers only part of our problem. We need decentralization because only thus can we ensure that the knowledge of the particular circumstances of time and place will be promptly used. So there's no way you can integrate all the knowledge of the market in a particular committee or even in a big company. And the argument of the net neutrality backers is, well, you're letting Verizon and Comcast control things. You're letting Netflix control things, and then you won't have access to websites. Well, that's simply not true. You're always going to have access to any website whose URL you can type into the bar there. You'll always be able to get there. But the question is, can you watch 5 movies at once? Can you stream 15 movies at once. Okay, well, without the images jerking. Okay, maybe not. But then, if you want that, then you should be able to pay more for it. If it's that important to you to watch these stupid postmodern movies and screen them 5 at a time or 10 at a time with all their nudity and crass language, well then you have to pay more for it. And the man who just watches an occasional YouTube video and sends email out and goes to a few websites to check the news, well, he should be able to pay $10 a month, $9 a month, $9.95, right? Well, that's about what a hamburger is worth to me, and I think I'll go to a restaurant like Puckett's that has a menu and that gives me the option. Try Puckett's, try the free market, not the Burger Neutrality restaurant where Andy Berke is having lunch.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.